Well, it's that time again. It's time for us to go over all of the stats in my 45,000 day hardcore Minecraft world. But instead of just throwing numbers at you guys, I'm going to be showing you guys exactly where I've accumulated these stats in my hardcore world. But before we get into it, I'm going to show you guys a trick that you may or may not know to be able to see your stats a little bit more clearly. So we're going to go into our options over here. We're going to be clicking on language. Here at the bottom where it says font settings, you're going to want to click on that. Right here, you'll see the Unicode font. You're going to want to turn that on. Notice how all the font changes over here. So now, if we go all the way back to our statistics and we click on the stats and we click on any item in here, now we won't have anything overlapping anymore. So if you guys see a little bit of the stats that might be a little bit different, that is how you do it. So you may have seen some pretty big numbers there when I first showed you guys. Well, that brings us to our very first location, which is going to be the Wither Skeleton Farm. I have hand dug this all with a pickaxe. I used a lot of a diamond pickaxe, and I've used quite a bit of the netherite pick, but ultimately this is where I farmed all of the netherrack, the basalt, the blackstone, and of course placed all of the blackstone slabs here on the floor and on the roof. But that's not all. This is also the location where I have farmed all of my wither skeletons as well. And with this farm giving me over 2,000 wither skulls an hour, it's pretty quick. But with over double the amount killed, guardians are my main source of experience in this world. This farm in particular has netted me over 600,000 guardians killed upon millions of experience as well. For every TNT used, I can kill about 750 guardians, which equates to over 7,500 experience per TNT. But those weren't the most dangerous mobs I've killed in this world. I've actually killed much more dangerous mobs, a mob that has claimed more worlds than I can count. Fighting each and every one of my raids by hand without a raid farm, I've killed over 3,000 Vexes in this world. That's a stat most hardcore Minecraft players avoid. And as a byproduct of somebody who doesn't have a raid farm, I have accumulated over 1.8 million villager trades. Villagers are my main source of bottles of enchanting, building blocks, emeralds, and much more. Before we proceed in today's video, if you made it to this part of the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing for some more. I just came out with my world tour for my 45,000 day hardcore Minecraft world. So if you guys want to check that out, I'll throw it in the top right hand corner for you guys. But let's get back into it. And next up is my time played stat. I'm sure you guys have already peeped this when I was showing off my traded with villager stat, but there's a couple things I would like to touch on before we move forward. You'll notice that my time with world open is a little bit less than my time played in this world. And that's because I started this world in 1.15 for when this stat has been around, these two ones right here. This stat was introduced in 1.16. So this is a little bit of a newer stat, but there are people who do not know that. Next, how do I calculate how many hours I have in my hardcore world, especially when it says 1.29 of an entire year? Well, I use an Excel spreadsheet to basically mathematically do that for me because I'm not a mathematical genius. Scrolling on up just a little bit, sneak time. I do crouch quite a bit in this world, which is getting me almost to the 140 day mark of sneak time. I think that's fairly impressive. Going on up, of course, I have never died in the world, so 0 players killed and 0 numbers of deaths. That means I've never had anybody in my world. This is a single player world. And of course, I've never died in this world. Mobs killed being at 1.3 million. Obviously, a lot of that is amongst guardians and wither skellies. Up here, you notice that I have jumped over 5.6 million times. I think this might actually be my very first stat in the tens of millions. Speaking about tens of millions, distance by elytra is currently maxed out. You cannot get any higher than this number right here, especially in kilometers. You'll notice that this number is identical to my distance sprinted. And I'm sure there's a couple other identical numbers in here that are completely maxed out as well. For the remainder of these stats, I'm just going to slowly scroll down. So if you guys want to see anything that you may be interested in, you guys can take a quick little gander at that. But this is my main statistic page. After this, we're going to go down the rabbit hole of different items that I have farmed up in the world and how I've done so. Next up, let's go over why I have over 3.5 million stone mined in the world. And at least 700,000 of that is from my Dwarven kingdom. This Dwarven kingdom extends into the side of the mountain, descending down into the depths, expanding into what's going to be a massive underground kingdom. What about basalt? Why have I placed over 323,000 basalt in my hardcore world? Well, as I showed previously, in my wither skeleton farm, it is fully encapsulated with basalt because it's blast resistant, which helps from gas from the outside coming in. But if you look over here, this volcano build that I'm currently working on, which is nowhere near completed, has netted me over 75,000 basalt placed in my world. And as you guys can see, it is no slouch. It is absolutely massive. Not to mention the bridge that we are walking on is largely made out of basalt as well. But here's a little bit of a different perspective of the volcano. That all the way up there is world height. I am going to be putting a dragon temple all the way up there, but this puts things into a little bit of perspective, huh? So that covers the first three. What about endstone? Well, I have completely hand mined out my entire end island. This project alone took me well over 100 hours to do. And as a close runner-up, I have sand. And as somebody who doesn't duplicate anything in the game, that means no TNT, no concrete, no sand, no nothing. That means I have to farm out all of my sand by hand, which brings us back to the volcano where I have completely mined out this entire desert. And yes, that also means the inside of the volcano too is absolutely barren. This and among other hopeless deserts as well. Which of course brings us to our next stat, gravel. Being at 258,000 gravel mined in the world, this obviously coincides with my sand stat to make all the concrete in my world. This concrete is also used for numerous other builds, such as dragons and a full-on city in my hardcore world. Also placing over 1.1 million stone. As mentioned before, I don't duplicate any TNT, so every single one of these trees that you see that is built within just this small little area of my world has not only been chopped down for all of the resources, but of course, built from the ground up as well. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at all of the logs that I've farmed in my hardcore world. With, of course, spruce logs being number one with over 161,000 mined. That's over 55,000 placed throughout the world. Next up, we have 65,000 dark oak logs farmed in the world with over 30,000 placed. Oak coming in third with over 40,000 mined and 17,000 placed, with a close runner-up of birch being at 30,000 mined with 11,000 placed. Warp wood being a little bit more difficult to obtain with 27,000 mined with 15,000 placed. One of my favorite wood types in the game coming in with 20,000 mined and 15,000 placed. Then we have jungle logs with 20,000 mined, 10,000 placed. With acacia logs just underneath with 19,000 mined and 6,000 placed. The newest log to hit the market at 11,000 mined, 7,000 placed. Its counterpart with 10,000 mined, 5,000 placed. And unfortunately, my least favorite log out of the bunch coming in at 8,000 mined, 4,000 placed. I really hope I didn't miss any of the logs, but I'm sure you guys will let me know in the comments down below. But I think I got them all. Let's quickly go over how many leaves I've also farmed as well, but super fast mode. As a quick little intermission, let me show you guys a way that I like to keep myself motivated in my hardcore world by tracking my stats within the game. Because right here is my board of advancements and achievements, of course. It looks a little bit bare, but that's because I want to give myself room to grow. Over here are all of the farms I have in the world. These are all of the mega builds I have in my world. But over here, more importantly, is my 1 million board up there. So, taking a look at this, you'll notice that I've got some things that I haven't shown you guys, like damage dealt being over 2 million. I have my chats in my Twitch chat being over 6 million. Chicken emote is just an emote that we use over on our Twitch channel. Villager trades, this is obviously outdated. Experience earned, well over 1 million. Just wanted to put that down as 1 million. Iron crafted over 3 millions. We got emeralds crafted over 1 million. But more importantly, I want to show you guys the board itself. I track every single 5,000 day increment. I have Amanda who's gifted over 1 million bits over on my Twitch channel, which is an absolute massive amount of support. But I wanted to bring this to your guys' attention because maybe this is something that you guys want to put in your world. But while we're out here in the end, I have farmed over 82,000 magma blocks, placing over 69,000 magma blocks. But over 30,000 of those magma blocks were actually placed here in the end, making this giant asteroid surrounded by a space station, which is a lot bigger than what it really looks like. The end makes this place look absolutely tiny, but I promise you, this asteroid is gigantic. And real quick before we leave this place, this is also where I do kill all of my withers, right underneath the bedrock end portal before I leave. This is also a wither rose farm as well, killing over 2,786 withers. Not only do I use beacons as decoration, as you guys can see here, I use them quite often. But if I go into my settings and I turn on my beacon beams right here, utilizing sodium extras and sodium to enable this option, I'll show you guys a few of the beacons that I have placed in my world. Just a small fraction of the beacons. Every one of these beacons is a hex beacon, and I can assure you, I have thousands of beacons all throughout my hardcore world. I get asked this question very frequently. How do I always have beacon effects in the top right hand corner, as you guys can see right now? And well, that is because I have done my due diligence to make my world a little bit more safe. This is just one of the many precautions that I take to keep my hardcore world thriving. And speaking of thriving, I have farmed over 139,000 skulk in the world over here at my skulk farm. And a large majority of this skulk has been placed in what I call the Skulk Lands, which is going to be a mega terraforming project in my world. And of course, its counterpart, moss, because I am building up the mossa portion of the mesa as well, placing over 212,000 moss. Next up, let's talk about diamonds, since I know you guys are all going to ask, how many diamonds have I farmed in my hardcore world? Well, I have farmed over 3,900 deep slate diamonds and over 2,694 regular diamonds. And because I know you guys are wondering this as well, I have farmed over 3,218 ancient debris, crafting over 147 netherite sets of armor, all throughout my Hall of Fames, crafting over 2,586 beacons. Let's go over some of my most used items in my world, starting at the very top with over 12 million, the netherite pickaxe. Underneath that, I have used my shovel 2.3 million times. I have my diamond pickaxe, something I can never touch again because this was a random number that I actually just randomly found and landed on, sitting at 1.69 million. Underneath that, we have my rockets at almost 900,000 used and 761,000 crafted. My axe, which is at 871,000. My hoe, which is at 863,000. Surprisingly, extremely close to the axe. I have swapped to my elytra 438 times, with my chest plate obviously being extremely close to that number as well. Used my sword over 300,000 times. You guys have seen all of these numbers. Black concrete powder, I've used quite a bit, sitting at 250,000 times. 240,000 for all of the dirt that I have placed throughout my world for terraforming. Black glass, mainly for fog effects. I'll show you guys a couple right now. With over 35,000 black glass placed here at the witch farm, and an additional 50,000 placed here in the main nether hub. I've placed over 162,000 blackstone slabs. That is from the wither skeleton perimeter for the floor and the ceiling, of course. Purple glass being at over 82,000 placed. Majority of that is because of the witch farm. I have crafted over 69,000 TNT in my world and placed over 64,000 because I don't dupe. Eating over 63,000 pork chops in game, which is kind of wild. Placing over 55,000 sea lanterns. There was a point in time sea lanterns were at the bottom of every one of my fog effects. But now a lot of those fog effects are replaced with frog lights at the very bottom. This pearlescent frog light sitting at 17,000. Now don't worry, I know there's a lot of stats to go through in the game, and I'm not going to show you them all, but there's a couple really cool things I would love to show you. And that's these little cuties right here. I would love to show you guys where all the wardens are, but they are literally everywhere. This one right here in particular being the first one I've ever captured. But that's not all. I have captured numerous other very dangerous mobs and incredibly rare mobs along the way. Right here, being an Elder Guardian. I also have a Warden up there as well. Down below us, I have blazes that are captured here with glass rods inside of their heads so they're unable to see me. If we come over here, you'll notice that I also have a breeze right behind this wall. And this baddie right here, which is probably my most rare mob in the game. This is a jack-o'-lantern drowned, holding a trident and a nautilus shell. I know this guy in particular is incredibly rare. And don't worry, that also means I, of course, have a full diamond zombie, but not just one, but I have two. This one in particular, I got over 100,000 blocks away from my base, but you know we had to bring it back. But on top of all that, I also have a full diamond skeleton to boot. And now time to just quickly scroll through all the stats. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. And starting things off over here at the mobs. And I'm going to scroll down here very slowly and go over a few things here. Blazes, I do kill quite a bit to make end rods. For those of you guys who don't know, yes, you can craft end rods using pop coarse fruit and a blaze rod. I have killed 49 dolphins, but that's because they deserved it. Don't like them. Not a big fan. I have a trident farm. That's why I've killed so many drowns in the world. Elder Guardians is pretty high up there as well. I've taken down a few ocean monuments in my day. Enderman farm. I don't use that often, but I did use pretty early on. I've killed over 23 end dragons. One end fight where I didn't have the end island when I was finished digging it all out. Foxes, well, yeah, you guys can see exactly why I've killed so many foxes. Thank you to Essentially Dead for that. Guardians, I already showed you guys earlier. Oglins, getting close to the 1000s. Llamas, don't know why those are so high. Maybe I guess trader llamas. I've killed over 26,000 magma cubes. A lot of that is due to my wither skeleton perimeter. Piglin brutes being at 284, which isn't too bad. Coming on down here, I've also killed 571 ravagers. I think that's fairly good. Silverfish being a little bit higher nowadays because of the new silverfish farm. So honestly, I think that's fairly low in comparison to what other people's are probably at. 21,000 slimes. I'm slowly getting to that 100,000 mark. Spiders is fairly decent. Could be a little bit higher. I don't have an actual spider farm. Oh, I guess trader llamas are part of a different bracket. So I actually guess that those other llamas were killed for their heads. I've killed over 41 wardens, which I think is extremely high, but I'm going to keep trying to get that number closer to 100. And everything else here is fairly normal, I think. Okay, the big one. Okay, so I'm not going to scroll through all of this because we would be here all day. But here are all the blocks that I have farmed and placed all throughout my world. But if you look over here, you'll see that this side right here, this is times farmed. For those of you guys who are not knowing what you're looking at when it comes to statistics, but here it is. I'm just going to do a little bit of a scroll down. I'm not going to go all the way down to the very bottom. But like I said, if you have any questions, I might be able to answer them in the comments below. Just because there isn't a search engine, unfortunately, in stats, which really does suck. I have placed over 40,000 torches, though. I think that's kind of impressive. I've used over 27,000 mangrove roots. I did a really cool effect over on my pirate island. I'm actually very surprised I've even placed that many scaffolds, but I think that is largely due to the fact that I used a lot of scaffolds to get rid of the lava in my wither skeleton perimeter until I started using flying machines. And as you guys can tell, we would be here all day if I was basically going through every single one of these stats. So I'm going to go all the way down to, let's say, the 5,000 mark, and then I'm going to call it. These Steve heads right here, these player heads, are all the micro blocks I have throughout my world. For those of you guys who are wondering, I get these guys through the Wandering Trader, through a custom data pack that I make monthly, or not me personally, but I have one of my moderators make monthly. And now we have gone a little bit past the 5,000 mark, and you can see we have barely even scratched the surface when it comes to statistics. So like I said, let me know in the comments below. I'll scroll all the way up to the top. I'll click on times broken for you guys. I'll click on times crafted. So you're looking at this middle number right here. Next up, time used. So we did go through a large portion of this earlier, so I don't think we need to go over this very much at all. Times picked up. Looking at this number right here, I know a lot of them are kind of overlapping. But as you guys can see, I have picked up my fair share of blocks. And lastly, items dropped in the world. These are basically items that I have thrown inside of the trash for whatever reason. But unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we're going to have for today. Like I said, leave a comment down below if you guys have any questions. And of course, if you haven't done so, please leave a like because it really helps out the channel. Check out the world tour that just dropped if you guys want to see all the creations throughout my world. And of course, I'll see you guys in the next one. But until then, YouTube thinks you guys should check out this video.